Okay, greetings and welcome to another Grenfell Mediawatch update. Today's edition I want to call BuckPass season. And I want to start the way I ended in 2017, and that was talking about home or homes. And many of you probably couldn't have failed to notice that at the end of 2017, over the last few weeks, there was an explosion of stories about the homeless. And, it's kind of common. Christmas comes up, people start feeling guilty about overindulging, and they want to kind of show that they've got some compassion in their heart for others who are not doing so well. But where are we now in 2018? Well, the homeless, I'm pretty sure, are still homeless. And even though I'd love to talk on that, but that's another issue. In the context of Grenfell, we now know that some 100 households were still homeless. And when I say homeless, I mean they were living in hotels or temporary accommodation. We also know that some 18 families were failed by the councils, who promised to give them an additional payment to assist them through the festive periods, and they just didn't get their act together. In fact, it's so bad that other Tory MPs were actually criticising their own friends, their own colleagues. But that wasn't the only bad news for 2017. Right at the end of the year, and I mean right at the end, Theresa May made a decision on the petition request for more additional panels to the Morbix inquiry. And she said no. Not only did she say no, she was very crafty in the way she used language to make sure that nobody could actually successfully appeal against her decision by giving the announcement right at the end of the year so there wouldn't be time to go for judicial review, and two, by making it clear that she'd actually considered the equalities legislation, so if anybody was going to try and get her on racism or diversity issues, she could actually say, well, no, we had factored this into the decision. Oh, and while we are on December, the alleged season of goodwill, it was very bad will that enabled KPMG to be appointed the chief auditors of the inquiry. This dirty little trick probably would have happened without anyone noticing if it hadn't been for the concerted efforts of a group of academics, artists, activists who came together and published an open letter exposing the huge conflict of interest that KPMG has with the inquiry. And I say huge conflict of interest because not only had KPMG already accepted millions of pounds in contracts from people like Ryden, those are the ones who did the refurbishment, Celotex, those are people who made the cladding, and of course Kensington Chelsea Council itself, so they were hardly impartial. They were also involved in lobbying for the scrapping of the Audit Commission, and this is the body that would have regulated those very same organisations in a case like this. They aren't impartial, and in fact in many ways that getting this contract without any competition, and this was a decision that was made in August and only revealed in December, was actually a reward. It was a way of saying, look KPMG, thanks for sorting it out back in the day, look, keep everything on track, here's £250,000, do your stuff. Now the media did pick up on this open letter, but they didn't focus on the detail. They focused on the headline facts. Whilst the government can say that they're not going to allow a panel to join Morbix because of claims that things won't look fair, they were at the same time simultaneously putting in place auditors that they controlled, that they had in their pockets, and they didn't care about how this was perceived. Oh, while talking about perceived, we also need to keep an eye on the use of, or the reuse of propaganda in the media, because one of the articles in the Evening Standard that covered this story about KPMG, I noticed the return of the words perceived failings, and there were no perceived failings of the council in the aftermath of the Grenfell massacre. Those failings were very real, but I've called this edition about BuckPass season for many reasons. First of all, since the last edition of this update, TMO has actually passed over and relinquished all control and responsibility of its properties to the council. The council, which countless reports have shown to be inept when it comes to securing the safety, the security, the dignity of tenants in its own borough. I mean, the media are reporting ridiculous stories where residents in one block of flats have been told they're going to have to pay £20,000 each. And this collectively is looking like a £1 million bill to actually guarantee their own safety, because their flats, which they've purchased or that they rent, actually use the same cladding or similar cladding that has failed to that in Grenfell. BuckPassing. Now, since the last update, there have been way too many developments, and I can't cover them all. But before I close, there's two that I want to touch on. The first is the police and their demand for £38 million in funding for the investigation. And I wonder how long it's going to take before some cretin comes out and says, actually, 38 million, it's not worth it. We've got to be mindful that the police have actually fulfilled their part of the Forced Pact, and they've provided the government with this arbitrary number of 71. And so now they're coming in to get paid for all that extra overtime. And I'm not saying that some of those officers who went through that crime scene and are still looking into that crime scene aren't sincere and aren't serious about getting the job done. But up to now, I don't think they've been on the side of survivors. And I'm talking about the leadership. And yesterday we found out that the London Fire Brigade is finally looking to purchase aerial platforms, that's fire engines with big ladders for you and me, that can actually reach the 23rd floor tower blocks. And the quote that if they'd had that, they could have saved more lives, is something that rings in all our minds. So on this cold, windy morning, I want to say the Grenfell Mediawatch team is back, and well, we've got a lot of work to do. So may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Asher.